Today, I'm going to show you the exact steps I took to take my French from this.
Je ne peux pas parler français.
To this.
2 mois que j'apprends le français. J'ai commencé à apprendre le français depuis 2 mois.
And this.
Pourquoi on me dit que t'es au Royaume-Uni là?
Bah oui, je viens de Royaume-Uni, mais j'apprends le français.
Ah vraiment?
Oui.
Moi j'ai l'impression que c'est une grosse phrase.
Tu parles français.
Vraiment?
In just over 2 months.
So if you want to make accelerated progress like I just showed you, then stick till the end of this video because I'm going to go through why I started to learn French, the framework that I used, exercises and resources that I used, and finally my best tips to skyrocket your progress. Just a quick warning, you will have to work hard if you're trying to achieve results as quickly as I did. I studied maybe about 5+ hours for the first month and then about 1 to 3 hours a day from then on. However, I will say this is not necessary to achieve good results. I can guarantee you'll get results with this just by doing 1 hour a day consistently. 1 day off every now and then is not gonna hurt, but make sure you're being consistent. That is really important. Personally, I had a looming deadline as motivation, so I managed to reach B1 level at an accelerated rate in just about 2 months. So that's roughly what you can expect by following this routine exactly. You might be wondering what deadline I'm talking about. So
let me explain. So 2 months ago, I decided I was determined to learn French. But I hadn't studied French since primary school and only had 1 month to reach B1 level or A level standard. Then what did I do?
So I spent the whole night high on the idea of learning a new language and researching whether it's even possible to learn a language in such a short amount of time. The statements were pretty ambiguous and I lost a little bit of hope. The estimated amount of time to reach the B1 level in French which I would need to take this course is 400 hours. I would have to study 13 hours a day to reach this level in 1 month. But I didn't give up here. I had an idea. This wasn't my first time self-studying a language. In fact, I'm currently 16 and in the past I've self-studied Japanese. And I took Spanish through secondary school. Studying Japanese gave me the experience to formulate the perfect plan and study routine to learn French in such an impossible time frame. And my mediocre knowledge of Spanish somewhat helped me understand the grammar rules of French a little bit quicker. So here's exactly what I did and your framework to follow.
Step 1, immediate immersion.
So step number 1, immediate immersion. Not only is this the framework of what I did to learn French, but this is also the most crucial exercise throughout the whole journey. It's what I spent at least 80% of my time doing, and it's just the most effective way to learn a language in general. I continued using this method the whole time and I will continue doing it for the rest of the time I'm learning languages. Immersion method is basically just immersing yourself in the language and the culture of the language you're trying to learn as much as possible. So this could be listening to podcasts all the time, watching YouTube videos, watching films, TV shows, maybe talking to people in that language online, just anything you can do to stay immersed in that language. This will allow you to pick up vocabulary so much quicker, you'll get better at listening to the language, all the stuff like that. Using the immersion method, you'll also pick up the pronunciation of the language so much more intuitively, and it will just be so much easier if you like. Trust me, this is just the best way to learn a language, and it is the essential framework that I'll be using for this method on how I learn French. However, the rest of the video is what holds this framework up together and will allow you to seriously make progress in French at a way quicker rate than most other people. So make sure you're paying attention. So how can you do the immersion method? Number 1, and probably my favorite way to immerse myself in a language, is podcasts. Podcasts are just so useful. You can use them just whenever you're doing anything really. I used to do it all the time when I was going running, if I'm going to the gym, literally whenever. Make sure you listen to podcasts. I'll put some recommendations here for French, so yeah, use them. Another great thing about podcasts is you don't have to be 100% focused when you listen to them. Another great way to immerse yourself is with cartoons. I was watching Geronimo Stilton, Peppa Pig. When I started learning French, it's basic vocabulary, basic grammar. It's just a really good entry-level way to immerse yourself in that language and get as much input in that language as possible. And because it's comprehensible, because it's such a low level, you can actually engage with it, which sounds kind of ironic because it's cartoons made for little kids, but if you don't understand what they're saying, then you won't really be able to engage. So that's why I think cartoons is a really good way to start. There's a really good add-on called LingoPie. I'm pretty sure you can get a free trial for it. That's what I used. A little bonus tip, if you try to cancel your subscription, I'm pretty sure that it gives you a little 7-day extra free period. So don't quote me on that, but just try it out if you want to. It basically just gives you interactive subtitles that you can click on and find the meaning of a word, which is really useful because instead of having to copy and paste the word or try and search the word up on Google, it's right there, accessible for you to look up straight away. Similar thing with Netflix. There is a add-on called Language Reactor, which is free. Does the same thing. You can make flashcards from the subtitles that are interactive and just memorize all these new pieces of vocabulary that you're learning whilst you're just watching Netflix and just having fun. Find some music that you like. I think for me, music is really what changed the journey of learning French. For me, at first, I wasn't that motivated. When I found music that I actually really liked, it just completely changed my perspective, and it opened my eyes to how beautiful the French language can sound. It really made me want to be able to speak this language. Like I was like, I have to be able to speak this language. Finding French teachers on YouTube is also really good, especially if the explanation's in French, because you can kind of get to grips of the language, that the more technical language they use for French, and the grammatical terms, which can be really useful. I recommend French avec Nelly, Perfect French with Dylan, I think she's called, and Easy French is super good. This isn't actually a French teaching channel, but they just do interviews on the street, and they got subtitles in English and French, so it's really good to practice. As you get better, you can start just watching more native content, like French YouTubers that are just native French speakers. At the moment, I'm watching these YouTubers called Bailan, Nico, and Flamby. They're kind of just like the main kind of streamers in France. You get to hear all the slang that people are using in daily life. And yeah, I think once you maybe reach a B1 level, you can start doing this. As a little guideline to help you out, as you are getting more comfortable, make sure you're not increasing the difficulty too much. You want to be aiming to understand about 90% of whatever you're listening to, or just the content that you're consuming, because this way, with the 90% that you're understanding, you know the general context of what you're watching or listening to. So there's 10% of words that you don't understand, you can kind of guess them or assume what they are by putting the context together, by putting 2 and 2 together. And this is how you can learn new vocabulary without actually having to study and look up all these words. And you'll just find that one day you'll be saying something in that language and you realize you just have the word that you're trying to say when you've never even really looked it up before or actively searched for it. I just want to remind you that at the start, everything will be really hard to understand, but don't be discouraged by this. Give it time, and I promise you, you will get there. Step number 2, the basics. I did this with the audio course that I just got off the App Store. I used the app called Innovative Language Learning, or French Pod 101. I think they got a website as well. Do a couple of their lessons every day. It's just a free course. They'll just take you through the basics, kind of grammar structure, basic vocabulary, how to introduce yourself, all of that stuff, just very useful. They got transcripts that you can use to find any of the vocabulary that you couldn't pick up just through listening. I really recommend audio courses because, again, like with the podcast I mentioned earlier, you can just do this whenever you want. Like, I did drop this after a couple weeks because it is very basic. So after a couple weeks, if you're feeling that's not really adding too much to your journey, then feel free to just drop that and just spend more time immersing yourself in the language. By the end of week 1, I've probably finished about 100 of the lessons. They're fairly short, each of them, so that does sound like a lot, but it's really not that much. And I think that put me in a very good place to continue. Step 2.5 is the grammar. This is 2.5 because step 2 also teaches you the grammar, but more specifically, if you're really struggling with grammar, personally, I just looked up a few French YouTube videos on all the grammar rules I didn't really understand. There's some really good YouTube videos that cover kind of all of the grammar in French as a whole. As long as you grasp the general concept of the grammar structures, that's really all you need. You don't need to go into too much depth, because with all the immersion that you're doing, you will hear and notice these grammar structures so often that they will kind of just come to you more intuitively and naturally without having to study in all these textbooks, studying for hours. Instead, you can just let it come to you with time. Obviously, if you are really struggling with one, do spend that time getting that down. Don't go crazy. For vocabulary, Anki is essential. Vocabulary is essential whenever you're learning a language. It makes such a huge difference in whether you can actually understand what somebody's saying, because if you don't know the words that they're saying, it doesn't matter how good your listening is, you can pick up each syllable they say, whatever. If you don't know the word, you don't know what they're saying. I recommend you download the desktop version because it's free. You can use the website on desktop or iOS. The app does cost like £25 on iPhone, so I don't really recommend that. I've never used that, to be honest. I did about 40 flashcards per day for the first month that I was learning French, and then I dialed it down to about 20 words per day from then on. This allowed me to learn about 1,200 words in just the first month that I was learning French. Using Anki will boost your progress just by ridiculous amount, so make sure you're using Anki or any alternative. It does look kind of old and a bit outdated and a little bit complicated, but just look up a quick YouTube tutorial on how to use it and it's so easy. The deck that I used is the 5,000 most common French words. Download Anki and get started. Step number 4 is pronunciation. Now on my TikTok, I've been getting so many comments saying that in my before versus after video that my French pronunciation from day one was too good, and people saying that people are doubting that I didn't speak French already or something like that. But literally all I did was just practice my pronunciation from day one. In fact, I think day one, the majority of what I did was pronunciation. Personally, I really recommend you watch Perfect French with Dylan's playlist on pronunciation. I went through every single video on that playlist by probably the 3rd day, and from then on I was just practicing my pronunciation every single day. If I came across a word that I didn't know how to pronounce, I was looking up. Even if I thought I knew how to pronounce it, I was looking up just in case, because French pronunciation is really difficult. There's so many irregulars. So I really recommend that you work on your pronunciation from the start. It'll make it so much easier for you later down the line as well, because you're not having to correct these habits that you formed early on that are incorrect. So get it down from the start and you'll thank yourself later. On a side note, it'll also make it easier to impress natives, and you won't get treated like a foreigner even if you are speaking their language. I just think there's only advantages to speaking with good pronunciation and good accent. Pronunciation and accent will come with time. Don't stress about it too much. If you are doing the immersion method, I promise you it will come so easily. When I learned Japanese, I didn't do any of this, any pronunciation practice really from the start, and I think I still have a pretty good accent. At least that's what people say to me. So don't stress about it, but if you are working on it from the start, it will make it so much easier.
Step number 5, speaking.
Now, step number 5, I was always speaking to myself just from the start. I think is what I did throughout the whole time I was learning Japanese as well. If you are learning a language, output is also really important. If you don't have somebody to practice to, like I just said, talk to yourself. It will allow you to gain a greater understanding of what your level is in that language and how well that you can speak that language. And if you are realizing whilst you're talking to yourself, like, hey, I can actually form a good amount of sentences, you might realize that you can actually speak the language better than you think, and that might give you the confidence to start talking to natives. If you want to do this, I recommend you use an app like HelloTalk, where you can kind of just do like a language exchange, find partners to talk to in your target language, stuff like that. HelloTalk is a really good app for that. I also like to go on VR chat. You can check my other videos on that. To speak languages. There's less pressure to talk. It's not exactly made for that, obviously, but if you go into French servers, just talk to French people and just have a good time, you know. So that's also an option. Alright, and finally, these are my best tips for learning French that I wish I knew before I started. Alright, tip number 1, set your phone to French. Everything in French. Like I said before, we're doing immersion, so set your phone to French. We want to be immersed in as much of the language as possible, so set your phone to French. This will help you so much. You'll pick up some really useful vocabulary. It can be a little bit stressful at times because you're just trying to relax on your phone and then go figure out what this French word says, what grammar is this, whatever, but it's worth it, trust me. Tip number 2 kind of links on to this. Put all your social media in French as well. This is seriously like super important. Putting your social media in French will help you progress so quickly, because on social media you will be consuming content that is more authentic and people are using language that is more colloquial, obviously depending on the content that you're watching, but you can pick up language that is just really fundamental in the way people speak in their daily lives, and you can become aware of the kind of slang and stuff that people use in French, and this really helped me improve my French as well, so I really recommend you do that. You're going to be kind of hearing the French that you would actually hear if you went to the country. It's not like the kind of stuff that you see in films or cartoons that's kind of maybe a little bit more cheesy or stuff like that. This is just real authentic French. Personally, I think the slang and the more casual side of French sounds way nicer than the kind of romanticized, fancy and formal French that most people fall in love with. I just think that French sounds really cool, so I think this is a great way to discover that kind of side of it. TikTok in French is super good for slang. If you scroll through the comments, you'll find out so many slang words that you didn't know. So definitely set your TikTok to French, set your YouTube to French. YouTube is really good because you'll be consuming more long form content. But it will also help you to stay up to date with trends in that culture, and you can also stay up to date with the kind of news and stuff. Another benefit is that even when you're doom scrolling, you'll be learning the language, so yeah, can't go wrong with that. Tip number 3, if possible, find a French friend, or if you already have a French friend, then talk to them. Having someone to talk to is really useful because they can correct you if you ever make any mistakes. Pronunciation is really good to have somebody to correct you on because they can really give you that more detailed and tailored advice. Especially if you're making mistakes that you didn't even know about, they can correct you on all of that. Like I said before, you can use apps like HelloTalk to find a French friend. You can do language exchange, they can practice their English or whatever, and you can practice your French. There's loads of options to find people to talk French with. It can also act as motivation to impress them. If you've got maybe like a family member who speaks French, I know that's quite common, and you want to impress your family member, say to them, hey, I'm gonna start learning French in 3 months. I want to be able to have a conversation with you, and that is going to be the motivation for you to learn French and stay consistent. Alright, final tip, number 4, record yourself speaking when you start learning French, because it is so useful and so gratifying to see the progress that you've actually made. So if you record yourself speaking to the camera on day 1 and maybe week 1, and then record yourself again after a month, 2 months, 3 months of learning French, you will see the insane amount of progress that you've made by using this method every day, putting the hard work in every day, and you will just feel so proud of yourself. And it's really a great feeling when you can actually see clearly the progress that you've made and just how far you've come. So record yourself day 1, record yourself day 90, record yourself month 6, and just enjoy the fruits of your labor. I really regret not doing this for my other languages. I've learned Japanese and Spanish, and I don't have any videos to compare them to anymore. So yeah, make sure you record yourself. Even it doesn't have to be super detailed, just like a 1-minute video of you talking, that's enough. I hope this video helped. If you need any more help, my DMs are always open. I've got loads of videos on my TikTok with more tips and in-depth tutorials on how I learned languages. And make sure you check out this video here if you want to see some of my VR chat content where I try speaking all the languages that I know. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one.